Law 2 of 2020, I'd like to ask the clerk to read the notice.
Please take notice that the Columbia County Board of Supervisors shall hold a public hearing on the 12th day of February 2020 at 7 p.m. in the Board of Supervisors Chambers, first floor, 401 State Street, Hudson, New York, 12534, concerning the proposed enactment of Local Law 2 of 2020, superseding the Public Officers Law, Section 3.1, as the residency to certain public officers in Columbia County. Copies of said proposed local law are available in the office of the clerk of the Board of Supervisors by order of the clerk of the board, Kelly S. Vaccaro, dated January 22nd, 2020.
Okay, thank you. Are there any comments from the supervisors regarding the local law? Any comments from supervisors? Any comments from supervisors? Okay. Any comments from the public regarding local law number 2? Any comments from the public regarding local law number 2?
Can you, for the ignorant ones here, remind us what that law is? You just said, I know, but can you spell it out plainly for us?
Could you repeat that,
It's hard
please?
to hear.
Bring the mic closer.
Superseding the Public Officers Law, Section 3.1, as to the residency of certain public officers in Columbia County.
So we can hire out-of-county sheriffs and deputy sheriffs if needed.
One more time, any comment from the public? Okay, with that, we'll close the public hearing, and we'll do a roll call vote.
Roll call vote for Local Law 2 of 2020. Basson.
Yes.
Weigelt.
Yes.
Leader.
Yes.
Benvenuto.
Yes.
Stacks.
Yes.
Adams.
Yes.
Metler.
Yes.
Collins.
Yes.
Riley.
Yes.
Eldridge.
Yes.
Fury.
Yes.
Chipkowski.
Yes.
Livonia.
Yes.
Sterling.
Yes.
Mia.
Yes.
Chimides.
Yes.
Musman.
Yes.
Scalera.
Yes.
Buzzy.
Yes.
Hotan.
Yes.
Hoagland, I'm sorry.
That's okay, yes.
I do that all the time. Morel.
Yes.
Knott.
Yes.
Skoda.
Yes.
35A, 0 nay, the local law passes.
Thank you. Would you read the notice for local law 3 of 2020?
Please take notice that the Columbia County Board of Supervisors shall hold a public hearing on the 12th day of February 2020 at 7 p.m. in the Board of Supervisors Chambers, first floor, 401 State Street, Hudson, New York, 12534, concerning the proposed enactment of Local Law 3, 2020, establishing immunization requirements for camps in the County of Columbia. Copies of said proposed law are available in the office of the Clerk of the Board of Supervisors by order of the Clerk of the Board, Kelly S. Vaccaro, dated January 22nd, 2020.
Thank you. Before we open it up to comments, I'd like to ask Supervisor Livonia, who's the chair of the Health and Human Services Committee, to come up and address the audience.
Just turn the on button on the microphone. Just turn that on.
Can everybody hear me okay? So welcome everyone. I'm happy to see that we have a large turnout here. Ed Kuhn is here from the Columbia County Health Department. He's also going to say a few words to everybody out here. I want to introduce myself. I'm Rob Livonia. I'm the new head of Health and Human Services. So I just started this position in January, and then I get to see all of your faces. So thanks for having me do that, Matt. I want to thank everyone for coming out. I also want to thank everyone for sending all the information that you did to us. I spoke to many. We've received tons of emails. We received emails for this. We received emails against this. This came from the Columbia County Health Department because there were 2 incidents that the health department had. And in addition to that, we've had numerous documentation that's coming down from all of these CDC, New York State Department of Health, Department of Public Health, American Camp Association. So because of the incidents that we've had, this law was presented to us in Health and Human Services, and we've been reviewing it. This vaccination situation, obviously, is something that the governor signed into law, which is for schools. It does not apply to camps. And we thought that we should put this law in place for camps and sort of have it coincide with what the state law is, which they also took out religious exemptions. I think we've done a poor job of getting this information out to the public. I think we personally did a poor job. So I want to apologize for that. And I also want to say that the reason we did this because it's a serious issue. Again, other counties in the state are enacting laws that are in addition to what the school policies are. Sullivan County has a public health order that staff and campers will be vaccinated. Orange County has done the same thing. Ulster County just put in their public health law where staff and campers will be vaccinated for at least MMR. We've gotten information from the CDC that says they strongly recommend that we do this. New York State Department of Health strongly recommends that we do this. I looked into this in depth. In Massachusetts, again, they're not saying that we must in Massachusetts, but they're saying that they also strongly recommend that we do this, and the American Camp Association strongly recommends that we do this. We had two major outbreaks in the county. Ed will give you the specifics on that. One was for 300 plus people, one was for a similar amount, one was for varicella, one was for Hep A. So these issues are real to us, and these are issues that we have definitely had to deal with. And we have a responsibility to hear what you have to say. We have a responsibility to hear the opposing side that is for this. But I do think that because we've done such a poor job of this, and we've spoke this out, I spoke to Matt about it, we spoke to committee about it, not everybody in the committee, I'm sorry, but we did speak to quite a few people. We're going to pull this. We are not going to be doing this year. So I want everybody to take a deep breath. We in no way wanted to hinder applicants from going to your camps. We in no way wanted to stop those that you've already hired. That was not our intent, and I think that a lot of misinformation went out there. That was absolutely not our intent. Our intent was to protect the masses. It was not to affect financial situations and all of your other beliefs. I will tell you that this is going to go back to committee. I will tell you that we are going to work through this, and before we send out any more information, which is not going to be for this year, so your camps are going to stay the way they are, we are going to be looking at this, and we are going to take all of your thoughts, all of your ideas, all of your emails, all your phone calls into consideration. And before we send out any more information, and like this time I know it came out in piecemeal a little bit, then it changed, and it changed. Frankly, I don't want to be a part of that either. So we're going to send it out. When we do, it's not going to be for months. So let's get through the summer season, get through the winter, and we will have an opportunity to discuss it in committee. I don't know if Matt's going to form a separate committee to look at this as well. We'll make sure that the county attorneys look at it. We'll make sure that we research all the laws and rules and regulations that we have in there, and we won't be presenting any misinformation as we did this time. So again, I apologize for the way that this was presented to everybody. We are going to still have an open forum here. You are going to have an opportunity to speak if you'd like, but I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood that we're not going to put this into effect this year. So hopefully that calms everybody down, and we will be looking at this again. I don't know if Ed is going to say a couple of things, if it's necessary or not, but he can give you a couple of more specifics if need be. But again, thank you for coming, thank you for understanding, and again, we apologize for the way it was presented, and we're going to move forward and look at this in more detail. Okay? Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Supervisor Ladonia. I'd like to have Ed Coons come up. Ed's in charge of our environmental unit in the Columbia County Health Department.
Good evening. Thank you for coming. Two things I wanted to just bring to everybody's attention so everybody knows where we're coming from. I've worked with the Columbia County Health Department for 32 years. And for 32 years, I have been the children's camp inspector, so I am very familiar with the codes. And a lot of, the law did not project out what was already current. It did not project out the little things that we were looking to add. Under Children's Camp Code 7-2, it does have a requirement that there be a record of immunizations for campers in the code. The only thing that was missing was pertussis, that's why we tried to add that. And then under a separate entity through New York State Department of Health, it talks about what vaccinations are required for, not required, what is highly recommended for staff. But it does not ask for, they ask for people to give a medical record to include their immunizations, should they have them. But it also had an allowance for an exemption, not only for staff, but for children, a medical exemption, a religious exemption. That did not get portrayed in that law. So why did we ask for it? 2016 and 2018, the Columbia County Health Department had to react to two major communicable disease outbreaks in camps. First one being hepatitis A. We had to amass a full staff to go to the camp, to go through all the medical records of 1,000 people, to ensure, to look for who was vaccinated and who was not vaccinated, and then ensure that the population that was not vaccinated would be protected because of a possible exposure to hepatitis A. I'd like to thank the camp director, first of all, for being such a good reporter. We've had a good rapport with our camps. And this in no means is out there to degrade any camp in this county. We have good open communication. They communicated when they knew it happened. And we took care of business, and I'm happy to say that the only hepatitis A was the one primary case that started. Everybody else was prevented from contracting Hep A. Second camp, or the second incident involved a camp that had a varicella outbreak, chickenpox, and many of us in this room have had chickenpox. But you know, when you're in a camp setting, you have to look at everybody in that situation. One of the goals that we have to look out for are when we're looking for vaccinations as staff. Children are already required to have it and have it on record, unless they have an exemption. However, staff is highly recommended. The big issue when it comes to staff and preventing disease in staff is if half your staff come down with disease, who's going to be responsible to watch the kids? This code requires certain ratios of staff to campers in order to make sure that campers are safe. And that's one of the reasons why we really took a hard look at that. We wanted to make sure that this didn't happen where a camp would have to close, because that would end up being the recommendation. If they can't staff it, they would have to close it. And that would be a big burden on the camp as well. So those are the reasons why we tried to enact this. And again, like Rob, I apologize that it wasn't done in the correct fashion. I'd like to say that we could work harder and more positive and maybe be a little bit more inclusive of your comments and your thoughts. So going forward with this, I'd be happy to serve on the committee to ensure that we do it well and we do it right, or we won't do it at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Okay, I just want to set a few ground rules here for those who want to speak. I will say that We like to limit everyone to 2 minutes, because as you can see, we have a lot of people signed up. But we also want to give you, since we're going to take some more time, a lot more time, to review this, we would accept your written statements or written comments as well, and we'll include that. Anything you want to submit in writing, you would submit to the clerk of the Board of Supervisors, and she will make sure that every supervisor sees a copy of your comments, as well as the health department. So, just so you know, so if you choose not to speak tonight, that's an option as well. But we do welcome that you would come up if you want to speak, that you can speak. So.
And then Matt, you probably want to mention as well, since the board is not going to pass this local law tonight, if it goes back to committee, there could be a decision not to adopt the law, there could be a decision to modify the law, do something different. It would be renoticed for an additional public hearing. So if you don't speak tonight because we're not passing the law, that's fine. If the law comes back up again next year or at another time, it'll be renoticed and you can come in and speak at that time, just so you know, you're not losing your chance.
But we would like, at the very least, we'd like your written input. You know, again, you're welcome to speak tonight, but we like your written input so that we can incorporate it into what we're doing, you know, as a work group moving forward. So the first person I have on the list is Stu Summer. And Laura, are you coming up together, or are you?
In my 2 minutes.
Okay. So you have
So you got 4 minutes.
Thank you. Is this on?
Yep.
Board of Supervisors, good evening. My name's Stu Summer. I'm from- I'm Stu Summer. I'm from Hillsdale. And I gave a lot of thought to what information I'd want to share with you tonight. I was going to say just a little bit. And I want to talk about herd immunity. What's the argument that forced, no, let me just read what I was going to say. What was the argument to force all school children to be vaccinated? Herd immunity. What was the argument to erase people's religious exemptions? Herd immunity. What is herd immunity? The idea of herd immunity originated with the actual measles. Community members get measles as children and have immunity for life. Mothers pass on temporary immunity to their unborn children through the placenta and to their newborn children through the breast milk. In a well-nourished community with clean water and sanitation, death rates from measles are next to zero. You can see the graph that I have included in my testimony. Pharmaceutical marketing has co-opted the term. Now we are told that herd immunity means 95% of children being vaccinated. It's a false concept. There never has been vaccine-induced herd immunity, and there never can be. And yet we are not being swept by deadly epidemics in the United States. Between 0 and 5 deaths have been caused by measles in the last 20 years in the United States. What about our schools? All of the children are now vaccinated. Maybe 10% of the adults are vaccinated. Why are the children vaccinated and the teachers and staff aren't? The teachers are unionized. The children do not have a union to protect them. But even if we forced all the adults in the schools to be vaccinated, would we have herd immunity? No. Why? First reason, vaccines don't create immunity depending on the vaccine, between 10 and 40% of the vaccinated. That is, they don't create antibodies. Second reason, vaccines wear off in between 2 and 20 years, depending on the vaccination. Third, live vaccines shed. roughly 30% of the measles cases that have been tested for in the United States have been from the measles vaccine itself. They were vaccine strain measles. Fourth, adults outside of the schools aren't vaccinated, and their childhood vaccinations have worn off. Even if everyone was vaccinated, we know that measles outbreaks still occur, but now in vaccine strains. We know of populations where there was 99% vaccination and measles broke out. The vaccine doesn't work that well. What epidemic do we have in the United States and in Columbia County? Allergies, ADHD, autoimmune diseases, learning disabilities, autism, Guillain-Barré syndrome. 54% of American children have a chronic disease and are being medicated. Roughly 1 in 50 American children have autism. It is bad. When we look at other countries with clean water and sanitation and good nutrition, what do we see? We see less vaccines. We see less autism. We see much lower infant and child mortality. The U.S. vaccinates the most, spends the most on health care, and has the sickest children in the entire developed world. I include a chart. And those countries with the lowest infant mortality have the least vaccines and the healthiest children, and none of those mandate. They don't mandate. They don't force vaccinations down the throat. We can do the same thing right here. We can have healthier children. The county law has as its foundation the state law that the Democrats passed. The Republicans did not vote for it. The Democrats were for forced vaccination in Albany. The Republicans against forced vaccination. Before you approve such a bill, I would ask the Board of Supervisors to do one thing. Ask Jake Ashby, an occupational therapist, why he voted against forced vaccinations. Ask Senator Jordan why she voted against overriding people's religious exemptions. Please ask them, then decide. And thank you for giving me a little more time than I had. I appreciate it.
Next on the list is Sarah Procell. And again, we'd like to ask you to limit your comments to 2 minutes. Or we're going to be here a long, long time.
Hi, people. Good evening. I want to say, first of all, I'm overwhelmed with gratitude right now that this has been postponed until next year. It's going to make a profound difference in my family's life. And I don't have to read all of this because of that news, and I'm going to try to figure out how to make it a little shorter. My name is Sarah Prochelle. I've been a resident and homeowner in Hillsdale for 18 years. I've raised 3 sons here in Columbia County. I am strongly against the proposed law because it fails to protect medically vulnerable children like my son. I'd like to talk to you about medical exemptions, the most important topic. I originally chose not to vaccinate my boys because I didn't feel comfortable with the risks involved. Yes, I have strong religious convictions also against vaccination, but the real medical risks are just as important. The CDC's own website publishes data, which I downloaded myself at home, that admits to tens of thousands of vaccine injuries every year, including death from vaccines, through the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, the CDC. But this isn't obscure information. And we know from the Harvard Pilgrim study that the CDC only captures less than 1% of serious injuries. This is the Harvard Pilgrim study that you can get also online. Which means that the unreported injuries are likely to be to the tune of millions each year. What's happening to our country's children is criminal, in my opinion. I'm a healthcare provider myself, and I had a 2-day-old patient in my practice who went into seizures immediately following a hepatitis B vaccine and died within 24 hours. That's an experience that never leaves a person. No one can convince me that vaccines are totally safe for everyone. They're not. I saw a child die with my own eyes. My middle child, Elliot, is 16 years old. Elliot has been part of the Flying Deer community year-round since he was 6 years old. For the last 2 summers, he worked at Flying Deer Camp as a junior counselor. It was his first job. Elliot has Asperger's and other neurological issues. He does not easily transplant from one place to another because of his special needs. Socializing is challenging for him, and yet Flying Deer is a place where he thrives. Flying Deer Flying Deer is not just a camp for Elliot, it's part of his community and extended family. It's an extremely important part of his life here in Columbia County. Elliot was already excluded last year from the school and community he grew up in for being unvaccinated. He refused to comply with the new mandates because he already has had a previous adverse reaction to a vaccine a couple years ago, for which he was provided a medical exemption by his pediatrician. In August of 2019, the New York State Department of Health issued emergency regulations for the purpose of making medical exemptions more difficult and frankly nearly impossible to obtain. As such, my son's medical exemption was no longer valid. He was immediately removed from school. Children in New York are not only being denied religious exemptions, they're also being denied medical exemptions, even when the pediatrician thinks they should have them. My story is not unique. These children have nowhere to go. Camp is the only thing left for some of them, and they're becoming outcasts through no fault of their own. Elliot attends school in Berkshire County where he can legally attend as an unvaccinated person. It's been a very difficult adjustment for him, to say the least, as he's no longer in his home community. And then I go on to say, if you vote, which you're not going to do today, and so I just want to say, please think about what this means for Elliot, for our community. Elliot, who, although he's particularly sensitive to vaccines, has hardly been sick a day in his life. He's not a person who's a danger to anyone. Quite the contrary, he's a precious gift and deserves to participate in society and give his gifts to others, and should be able to do so without taking risks with his own health and life, such as those posed by the CDC schedule of vaccinations. And yeah, I just want to say that the religious exemption, if even, you might have an issue with the word religion, or the fact that people are using religion to, get out of doing a medical procedure. But we need to have the religious exemption, not just for religious reasons, but for medical reasons, because the medical exemption is not working. It doesn't cover hardly anyone. So that's a very important consideration. Thank you.
I just want to note that all of your comments, we are videotaping, which we do all of our meetings. So we are capturing all of the comments. So if you're wondering how we're recording this, we are recording it. Next, we have Michelle Applin.
I can pass tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Hugh Williams.
I can also see.
Thank you. Hannah Bale.
I cede my time too. I handed it out to everybody.
Okay. Thank you. Kate Martino.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Kate Martino. I live in Philmont, and I'm going to try to keep this under the time. We already talked about, well, I'll start from here. This law, which you guys have decided to hold off on, but it would change the existing mandatory reporting to mandatory vaccination. And Big Problem does further exclude unvaccinated children who no longer have religious or medical exemptions. Requiring children to submit to medical interventions to be accepted into social situations is coercive. Unvaccinated and vaccinated children have coexisted in this county for decades, and they do not pose a risk to public health, two of them together. Parents who have witnessed adverse reactions, injury, or death due to vaccinations, and informed parents who choose not to vaccinate their children have a different view of the repeated story that vaccines are safe and effective. Recent studies that indicate vaccines are not safe and effective get almost no attention from the media, our government, or our agencies. The catch-up schedule for unvaccinated children to attend public school has never been safety tested. In my family, there is a history of severe adverse reactions, and that's why many of my sisters and the next generation of kids have not been vaccinated. My grandson, wanting to continue in the 10th grade at public school, and his parents, feeling trapped, much deliberation, stress, agreed to start the catch-up schedule. Trying to believe it will work, he'll be okay. After all, he's big and strong. The first round of vaccines brought localized pain, fever, headache, blurry vision, extreme joint pain, confusion, rash on arms and upper body, sore throat, cough, weakness, fever, on and off for many weeks, missing many days of school in September and October, a kid who never missed more than 1 or 2 days. It did cause postponement of the next round of vaccines until the end of November. He had a less severe reaction, but still not feeling well from the beginning, still coughing, a little bit of depression, a lot of catching colds. His immunity was really, really compromised. And right now, today, next comes boosters. He has developed no antibodies that show yet. My niece's grandchildren experienced similar, ages 11 and 13, and within 7 days, the 11-year-old was diagnosed with measles. I'm really, really concerned about these kids and all the other kids struggling because of vaccine mandates, the loss of their exemptions, the catch-up schedule, and not just my kids or my niece's children, everybody's kids. We're in a national crisis and maybe even a global crisis. There are many, many deaths and injuries that we don't hear of, we don't know of. We need to find out the facts here. And now on to quickly, mandating vaccinations for adult camp staff is the first law in New York State requiring immunizations for adults based on the children's vaccine schedule. Can you imagine what that means? Anybody who has contact with children, parents, grandparents, bus drivers, maintenance people, store clerks, requiring individuals to submit to medical interventions to qualify for a job is coercive. The catch-up schedule is not proven safe for adults either. And this won't stop here. If we do pass this law, we're not going to now, but if we do it anytime, it's not going to stop here. We all can become part of this vaccination experiment, and I don't think it will look good. I'm asking everybody here to please help us. Please help us protect our rights and our freedoms, and please, we need to get ahead of this, not behind it. It's going to explode. When everything comes out here, it's going to explode. So please, 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 help us out with this, and we all have the same thing in mind. We want to protect our children. Let's get down to the bottom of it. Thank you all.
Matt Davis?
I yield. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Eric Kress?
Hello. I just want to say that not being good at this kind of thing, I spent probably 20 hours or more writing the letter that I put on your desk, or this message I wanted to give you. But I'm not going to use it because it's not really... Anyway, you have it on your desk. If you want to read it, I know some of you will. I'm pretty sure some of you won't. If you look around the room and see who's listening as the people speak, you probably can get an idea who's not going to listen or read. But one of the things that concerned me when I came in and I heard Mr. Coons from the health department speaking, and he said, there's been what did you say, an outbreak. There's been some outbreaks here in Columbia County. And we spent part of that 20 hours, and maybe on top of that 20 hours, we spent some time researching health department records and reports. And we found that there was one case of hepatitis A. I thought it was in 2017 at a camp in Copiague. Mr. Coons, I think, said a different year, but nevertheless, he did in the end, I believe, if I didn't mishear, concede that it was one case. One case is not an outbreak. One case is not even a cluster. A cluster is a term used for two cases, which is applicable to the varicella case that also happened at the same camp in Copiague. A cluster is a term used to make all you guys and all us guys think that 2 is a really big number. 2 is not a big number. If you look at this whole program, the whole agenda, that, as I think Mr. Lagonia pointed out, is coming from the CDC, is coming from the state, is coming from the county health department. The one thing he omitted to put was that this agenda, before the CDC, the people who are on top of the CDC, is the drug companies, the pharmaceutical companies, the companies that brought us that out, the companies that brought us opioids. These are the people who are on top of it. And you people are the people on the bottom. When we stood outside Dee Dee Barrett's office some weeks ago, the Register Star was there, and they wrote an article that was at least not intentionally objectionable. And that's because the Register Star is a small enough paper that they aren't influenced by the pharmaceutical companies. You are on that same level. You're our protection. You're the people here on the ground in Columbia County. You're not influenced by the drug companies to the extent that everyone else is. Mr. Coons works for the county health department. He's influenced to a larger extent than you are. He's got pressure on him from the state health department. The state health department has pressure from the series as it goes up. But it's your job here in this room to protect us from them. That's who we need to be protected from.
Thank you. Peter Buckby?
I'm not Peter, but.
Buckby. Are you Kristen Buckby?
Yeah.
So Peter is ceding his time?
He thought he was listed after me.
Okay.
Can we switch places?
Hi, I'm just going to expand on that just a little bit. Thank you. My name is Kristen Buckby. I was born and raised in Columbia County. I'm a parent and an educator, and I oppose the future bill as it comes up. And I would like to comment on the threat to public health and safety. The public health and safety of this county is something that I take seriously, and I'm grateful for all of the work that's done to protect our county's health. Having read through the minutes from the Health and Human Services monthly reports going back years and talking to local officials, I have found 0 cases of the measles, 1 case of hepatitis A in a foreign staff worker in 2017, and 2 cases of varicella last summer. Hepatitis A is so rare here that the state doesn't even require a hepatitis vaccine in its list of mandated vaccines for school attendance. According to the New York
State Registry for reported cases of communicable disease, and I printed the whole thing out for you to look at. There was one case of hepatitis A in Columbia County in a 5-year period. One. So if we're to assume that the camp followed the law and reported the one case, that one case is the one reported case in Columbia County in 5 years. Regarding the 2 cases of varicella last summer, if you refer to a recently published graph in the New York Times, also in my packet, you will see that they place varicella on the scale of morbidity on par with the common cold. In addition, in the same New York State Registry, the state excludes chickenpox altogether. Clearly, in the eyes of the state, it doesn't pose a serious enough risk to public health to even include in the data on reported cases of communicable diseases. If these incidences aren't considered a serious public health crisis or risk to the state, why should they to us? They're not outbreaks. Many inaccuracies were communicated by the town board supervisors or health officials over the last few weeks. We were told there was an outbreak that led to thousands of children receiving emergency vaccinations at camps in Columbia County last summer. We know this is not true. We were told a number of times that it is already law that children have to be vaccinated in order to attend camps. We also all know that that is not true. And the strong recommendations that were published, issued by the state the last time in April of 2019, were done during an active outbreak that is over. It was also stated in a Health and Human Services report from August last year that I also have in my packet, that the state had already passed a law requiring immunizations for school workers and students. And of course, that's not true. So it's important that you all fully understand that the proposed county bill is actually stricter than New York State's regulations requiring immunizations for school attendance at this time. The state's law does not apply to adult staff in schools, nor does it apply to students age 18 and older. Your bill is in effect an adult mandate bill and the first of its kind in this state. If one wishes to make the case that this law is designed to prevent the possibility of future outbreaks, please consider that the only cases of communicable disease occurred at a camp that already requires its campers be fully vaccinated. Furthermore, please acknowledge the competency and excellence in our county officials and camp directors' ability to, as of yet, not only prevent and contain possible outbreaks, but do this while still maintaining and protecting the rights of the citizens in this county. Your job as elected officials is not only to speak honestly to your constituents and thoroughly understand all details and implications of the bills you consider passing, but also to protect the citizens in your district from overreach of greater governmental powers when they don't have your constituents' best interests in mind. Though the pressure from state and federal agencies is strong, I am sure, and it's already been mentioned, I urge you to recognize the power of your jurisdiction on this matter as county officials and to exercise it. Many of us consider the increasing overreach a valid threat to public health and safety. Thank you.
Peter Busby?
I see, it's printed out.
Thank you. Ella Lapointe. Again, I'd like to remind you, 2 minutes. And you have an opportunity to submit whatever in writing, which I believe you already have.
Thank you. My name is Ella Lapointe, and I oppose this bill in its current form. I think there's a better form that might come later because I can tell that you're listening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I believe we all care about health and well-being of people in Columbia County. Community health is a collaborative process. This new law will significantly impact the health and well-being of some children and adults. It will restrict their bodily autonomy, right to informed consent, and freedom of religion. What could justify this? There is no public health emergency in camps in Columbia County. There are robust systems of surveillance and containment to address any health concerns. Just as we can treat various diseases and conditions for which we have no vaccines, there is no reason to be more fearful or concerned about conditions for which we have vaccines. Even during the measles outbreak, there were no reported cases in camps or anywhere else in Columbia County. Many vaccines only prevent symptoms but do not prevent infection and transmission. I can provide you with robust science to back that claim up. I will also provide you with several documentations of outbreaks in vaccinated populations. 79 out of 194 cases in the Disney outbreak were confirmed to be vaccine strain. Fear-mongering and propaganda tell you that outbreaks occur because of unvaccinated individuals. This is outright false and misleading. People's religious beliefs did not disappear on June 13th when we were forced to choose between our faith and the right to send our children to school in New York State. This law for camps must include an option for a religious or conscientious objection. Both the Jewish and Muslim faiths object to animal products derived from pig, dog, monkey, etc., which are in some vaccines. Vaccine manufacturing involves cruelty to animals, which goes against Buddhism and many other faiths and philosophies of life. Bovine serum in vaccines goes against the Hindu faith. Some vaccines contain aborted fetal cells in DNA strains, which is considered by many to be a desecration of human remains. Many Christians ethically oppose abortion and are not informed that some vaccines contain aborted fetal cells, known officially as MRC5 human diploid cells and WI38. I want to talk about chickenpox for a moment. Many of us in this room are chickenpox survivors. Varicella can be problematic for some at-risk individuals, but so can many other ailments for which we have no vaccines. From Merck's Varivax package insert, avoid close contact with high-risk individuals susceptible to varicella for up to 6 weeks since transmission of varicella vaccine virus has been reported. No one I know received this information before vaccination. To clarify, it means if you just got vaccinated, you're posing at-risk individuals in at-risk. Okay? It's also possible to get chickenpox from the vaccine. Chickenpox is not dangerous to healthy children. The virus in the chickenpox vaccine is grown in aborted fetal cells, and the shot contains a long list of ingredients that would be objectionable to individuals based on sincere religious beliefs. Should we choose a mild childhood disease with rare complications that allows us to live according to our faith, or should we throw away the dictates of our conscience in order to fit in, and put our children at risk of a lifetime of chronic disease, compromising their God-given immune systems? My grandmother was an Italian Jew. She could not finish school because of anti-Semitic laws. At the time, this was considered a public health risk. Nazi propaganda pushed a general view of Jews as spreading disease. I will give you screenshots of similar propaganda about the unvaccinated. A person cannot spread a disease they do not have. Not a single case of measles in New York State was in a child with a religious exemption. Yet they used the crisis to promote a draconian and segregating bill. Period. If you choose to extend this same deed and impose it on campers and staff in New York State, you will contribute to a well-calculated and inhumane campaign to isolate and harm these families and children. Who will bear moral responsibility if even one child or adult is harmed by a vaccine they received due to coercion, by betraying their intuition and their conscience to be socially included? Thank you for your time.
Frank?
He's seated.
Okay,
Not here.
thank you. Katie Cashin?
I see one. I gave my letter to everyone.
Krista Stosiak? Did I say that right?
My name is Krista Stosiak, and together with my husband Martin, we've been residents and business owners in Columbia County for over 30 years. We have 3 children who have all enjoyed a variety of camps in this area. They are all unvaccinated. I am grateful for the opportunity to be heard today. I strongly oppose any bill that would mandate vaccines for all campers and staff, and I encourage each of you to vote it down when it comes up. I am incensed to think that anyone can put any notion of the common good ahead of my constitutional right to decide what, how, and when any foreign substance shall be injected into my or my children's bloodstream, regardless of what it is. But particularly in the case of vaccines which to this day have never gone through a saline placebo safety study and are in fact classified, legally classified, as unavoidably unsafe. While the communicable illnesses that have brought this bill to the table have taken no lives in Columbia County in the last God knows how long, and are instead a passing crappy week in bed, that imparts lifelong immunity to those affected, fully protecting them throughout old age as well as the youngest among us, because a naturally immune mother passes her immunity to her baby through her placenta as well as her breast milk, fully protecting them until they are strong enough to handle the illness on their own when nature intended them to get it. Both things that vaccines do not achieve. And yet again, why vaccine-induced herd immunity is a myth. When the CDC hired Harvard to assess the efficacy of their passive vaccine adverse events reporting system, and found that it captures less than 1% of the actual number of children damaged by vaccines because no one knows about it, they stopped the study and did nothing to improve the system, which raises a very red flag, doesn't it? But what it tells us is, if Columbia County mandates vaccines to every camper and staff, it is not a question of will there be injury. It is a question of how much injury will there be, and who among you are prepared to shoulder that kind of responsibility. Where there is a risk in a procedure unavoidably unsafe, there must be choice. Like any other medical intervention, vaccines will never be one size fits all. The science is definitely not settled. Just listen to the World Health Organization's last summit meeting in Switzerland in the past December. It is eye-opening. Where we find ourselves in this controversy requires every one of us to go down that rabbit hole and educate ourselves. No one will do it for us. Through the independent scientific studies and reports of third-party researchers with no conflicts of interest. In other words, stop assuming you've got the story straight from the CDC, the WHO, the FDA, or any of our captured regulatory agencies that profit from the sale of vaccines. And please remember that our Columbia County Board of Health does in fact get much, if not all, of their information directly from these agencies. Okay, in today's climate of fear-induced public opinion by many, liability is a real issue. And rather than passing a law that would take away our freedom, cause harm, and further punish our already segregated children while destroying some of our best-loved camps, please consider requiring every camp to simply request a release of liability from any family who declines vaccines. Place the responsibility in the hands of the camps themselves, where it belongs to make the best decision for their individual situation. They are professionals. They make important decisions every day tailored to their own needs. If a camp is hiring foreign labor, they might decide to require certain vaccinations to participate in their camp. No one should stop them. Some will no doubt choose differently, which is appropriate and gives every parent the freedom to choose the right camp for their child. There has been and is no epidemic to warrant stepping into an arena of these dangerous and constitutionally void laws. And the notion that it might be healthier to get the chicken pox as I did, or the mumps as I did, or the measles as I did. With first world sanitation, clean water, and good nutrition that imparts lifelong immunity instead of the controversial and scientifically weak vaccine? That is a valid question that every parent should have the right to decide on their own or with a doctor of their choice through the process of informed consent, not forced by the fear-driven deception and coercion of a holier-than-thou, money-corrupted industry. I appreciate how many responsibilities you carry in serving our towns, and I hope you are beginning to realize how much this decision matters when it comes up. I beg you to begin researching this issue more closely and to please stand with us in choosing a waiver over mandates. Thank you.
Richard Harrison.
I see my time.
Thank you. Leland Blairman. Okay, thank you. Eileen, is that Ordu?
I didn't get a chance to print anything out. I'm hoping that I can read.
2 minutes?
Hopefully,
Use a timer, Matt. Use a timer. I have a timer. Use a timer. And when time's up, when time, stop the time.
my name is Eileen Ordu. I live in Philmont. I'm strongly opposed. My name is Eileen Ordu. I live in Philmont. I'm strongly opposed to this bill. I'll try to be, I'm going to speak quickly and kind of get through this. You'll notice I'm going to repeat some things that you've already heard, but I think I'd like to say. As it turned out, after the June 13th removal of the religious exemption, my daughter, Julia, had to have all of her vaccinations brought up to compliancy within a few short months. She was literally kicked out of her boarding school at the start of her senior year. She had been so excited to start school. But she wasn't in compliance, and she was treated as if she was a threat to others there. And this is at a high school, educated administrators and teachers, treating her as if she was a threat to everyone's safety, even though she had not been seen as a threat during the previous 3 years that she was attending the school and living on campus. I was actually working at that school for 7.5 years, and so she had administrators and teachers treating her as if she was a threat to everyone's safety, even though she had not been seen as a threat during the previous 3 years that she was attending the school and living on campus. I was actually working at that school for 7.5 years, and so she had actually been living on campus unvaccinated since she was 8. It was the place she called home. But in September, she was told she could not be on campus. She could not even come on weekends to watch her boyfriend play soccer because she was a threat. She wasn't allowed to step foot on the campus. She and I were both treated like criminals. I was told by a school administrator that I was an irresponsible parent, even as we were scrambling to get into compliance with the Columbia County Department of Health. She was seen as a threat even when the majority of the school's faculty, probably 90% of them, were not receiving boosters and so were no longer immunized. And when 18-year-olds at the same school were allowed to continue their education regardless of whether they were vaccinated or not. It didn't make sense. My daughter was 17 and a half. It makes no sense to consider the unvaccinated a threat. There are outbreaks, as you've been hearing, outbreaks of disease among the vaccinated as well as the unvaccinated, and even among the hyper-vaccinated, for example, at U.S. military bases. Vaccines give only temporary protection from the disease, between 2 and 20 years, depending on the vaccine, if they give any protection at all. As you've learned, a percentage of the population who gets the vaccine never develops the immunity. I hear all the time how the unvaccinated are a threat to herd immunity. I think Stu Summer cleared that up. That's misinformation. And yet I hear, I need to vaccinate my child in order to protect everybody. Because of vaccines, we no longer have natural herd immunity. Vaccine immunity is not lifelong. It is not consistently effective. It cannot come close to achieving herd immunity, even in a population that is 95% vaccinated. Instead of shooting up our kids, we need to shoot down the misinformation around vaccines. We need to stop marginalizing and vilifying people who choose not to get vaccinated or not to vaccinate their kids. We need to stop being afraid of the unvaccinated, afraid of healthy children at our schools and at our camps. The vaccinated and unvaccinated have coexisted in schools and camps in New York State for many, many years. There's no reason to change the rules around who can and who cannot participate in these very important social venues. And I just want to say thank you again for listening to us all. Appreciate it.
Martin Summer. Okay. Viola Sylvan.
Hi, my name is Viola Silvan. I live in Chatham. On June 13th, I received the information that I had to vaccinate this beautiful child here. We were doing a delayed selective schedule. By the way, I closed the bill. And my pediatrician informed me that for her to continue daycare, she would have to, the only way she would get a medical exemption, she has severe allergies, so we have done the delayed schedule, was that she would have a severe anaphylactic reaction. For people who haven't experienced that, which I have, and got to the ER on time and didn't die of it, it basically means that she would have to die in order to get a medical exemption and be revived on time. So, any of you want to make that choice for this baby? Anybody?
No.
Thank you. I quit my job and I'm home with her now. And for Mr. Coons, I'm not a medical doctor, I just have a few clarifying questions. The two people who had the chicken pox, were they vaccinated? It seems like... Do we know that?
We know that the camp required vaccinations, and we
So-
know that 5 campers
All
were
right,
vaccinated
I don't want, not
because
back
they
and
hadn't
forth.
had their second shot.
This is for you to give your testimony.
Okay.
That's it.
So I can't ask questions?
Just give your testimony.
Okay, so I'm just confused. If the reason why we're having this law now is that 2 people who were vaccinated got the vaccine illness, that's confusing to me. And then I would also just ask a clarifying question. I don't know if you guys know this as medical experts making this law for us. Can a person who's been vaccinated actually still spread the disease?
Yes.
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 Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth Coe.
I'll pass.
Thank you. Is it Lila Coe? Thank you. Reese Harrison.
Yeah, I was planning on yielding my time, but I will say briefly, I'm 17 years old, I'm vaccinated, and I find it really sad that anyone would think that I shouldn't be allowed to spend time with my peers. Thank you.
Adam Weinstein.
Hi, good evening. I'm Adam Weinstein. I'm the executive director of Berkshire Hills Eisenberg Camp. We operate in Copake and in Ankrum. We've been around since the 1930s. I want to thank all of you on the Board of Supervisors for all that you do to make Columbia County a beautiful place. It adds so much to our campers' camp experience and our staff experience. I also want to thank Ed and his team. You guys have an amazing Department of Health. You really do. They are the first person. I'm concerned about safety. Every camp director is concerned about safety. They're the first people we call when we have trouble. And this summer, we had the 2 varicella cases, the 2 chickenpox cases. And what I would argue is that the 2 cases we have actually show that the regulatory framework that we have right now works. We got the 2 chickenpox cases. We called Ed and his team immediately, and they responded incredibly well. The current camp law requires that we have the immunization information for all of our participants, and we have that for both campers and staff. We put that information into an electronic database. We were able, incredibly quickly, to figure out who was vaccinated and who was at risk, and give that information to the health department. The health department was then able to come in and vaccinate the folks who needed to be vaccinated. And we were able to move on with our summer with just the 2 cases that we had. We kept those folks isolated, we vaccinated everyone who needed to be vaccinated, and we moved on. So the regulatory framework in this situation really worked. So I'm glad you're putting this off for this year. I hope you continue to put it off. If you don't, there are just a few things that I'd like to flag. One, I'm the former executive director of the American Camp Association for New York and New Jersey. I did that for 8 years prior to coming to Berkshire Hills Eisenberg Camp. Vaccines are not mandated by ACA. We're an ACA accredited camp. There's no requirement with the American Camp Association that you have to accredit. I also, in looking at what was the originally drafted law, we really need to think about what kind of evidence that we are willing to accept for folks to show that they've been vaccinated. For instance, I was born in 1967. My doctor is no more, my parents are no more. What right now I would have to do, and any staff, probably most of us, most of you as well, would have to do, if you wanted to prove that you were vaccinated, was go and get a titer. So everyone is having to have the expense, everyone now, not just when there's an incident, but you're actually asking every single staff member who's in camp, who's in a certain situation, to go and spend money on a titer instead of managing the situation like we did last summer. There are also still countries, we have staff among the camps in the area from over 30 countries, where chickenpox is still dealt with the way chickenpox was dealt with when we were little. That someone gets chickenpox, you have a chickenpox party, maybe you stick the kid in the bathtub with oatmeal, no one's going to the doctor. So all of those kids who are incredible staff members for us and add a lot to our program, they can't get a doctor's note saying that they had chickenpox because they never went to the doctor when they had chickenpox. They had chickenpox, they stayed home. So they would go in their country where they don't give the varicella vaccine to the doctor and say, can you put on my health history that I had chickenpox? And the doctor would say, no, I can't do that because I didn't see you have chickenpox. And then they would say to the doctor, well, then I need the varicella vaccine. Can you give me the varicella vaccine? And then the doctor would say, no, I can't give you the varicella vaccine because you've already had chickenpox. So it doesn't make sense to give you the varicella vaccine anymore. So we really need to make sure that from an evidentiary perspective that we're really careful in terms of what we think about if you are going to create a law in this area. Finally, I would hope that the state would be the one who would be acting and it wouldn't be at a county level. The camping business it's competitive for us to find staff, it's competitive for us to find kids, and if the rules are different in Columbia County than they are in the rest of New York State, it's going to be incredibly challenging for us. Thank you very much.
Jennifer Amelia McIsaac. Again, I'm going to remind everybody, we've been going a while. We need 2 minutes, please.
Thank you. My name is Jennifer Amelia McIsaac. I live in Craryville, and I'm here to urge you to oppose any law that would mandate vaccines. I believe it is immoral and unethical to discriminate against anyone for any reason. and especially against their medical history or their religion. I teach classes and workshops all over Columbia County, and I have never denied anyone who wanted to participate for any reason. I find that the more diverse a group is, the richer and more fulfilling the experience is. I would never discriminate against anyone, and I hope that you would not either.
Thank you. Michael Rose.
Hi, my name is Michael Rose. I live and work in Ancrumdale. I run a camp for people with developmental disabilities. Mostly they come up from New York City. I really like to echo what Adam has said. I've been to Adam's camp. He runs a wonderful camp. You'll hear from another camp director over there, David, who runs another wonderful camp. I've been there for 26 years. I've never seen any outbreak. In fact, I've never seen a single case of measles or varicella. I grew up in the UK. I'm a chickenpox survivor. And we have a very good relationship with Ed and the Department of Health. We score 100% on our ACA accreditation. We comply to all local and state laws. We don't see anything really in this, in the proposed changes that would help us in any way, and so we're opposed to it. If it was enacted, just like Adam said, we'd like to see some changes regarding tetanus, varicella. We think it's kind of discriminating against the camps and the camp staff to make them comply to a different law to staff that work in an education setting or any other setting. We think this should be enacted on a statewide level. This really only came to my attention about a week ago, so we've really been scrambling to react to it. So I'm glad you guys are taking the time to delay this until next year, and hopefully we can make some changes. And you know, we see about 700 people come through the camp in the summer. Just like David and Adam over there, our number one responsibility and is for the safety and happiness of the campers that come. That's what we do every single day, and we'll continue to do so. Hopefully there'll be some common sense here and a little bit of time to adjust this, and thanks for your time. Okay.
Michael Pyfrom, P-Y-F-R-O-M.
Concede.
All right, thank you. Malcolm Gardner.
I'll pass, thank you.
Thank you. Susan Gardner.
I'll pass also.
David Fleischer.
I'm going to try to go off mic. Can you hear me in the back of the room? You okay? Yeah. Great. So I'm David Fleischner. I'm the camp director at Scatico in Elizaville. This is going to be our 100th summer family owned. We've been around a long time. And I did want to echo what Adam said. Our partnership with the Columbia County Department of Health has been great, and it's been great to work with through the years. Ed's been doing this since 1988, right? So I've been working with him for, I guess it's 30-something years. Yeah, I'm not going to repeat all the stuff that Adam and Michael had to say. I did want to clarify the American Camp Association. I'm a former board member of the New York section, does not mandate vaccines at camp. So I want to make that clear. They have a list of recommended vaccines. It is not mandated. And then I think the only other thing I wanted to comment on is the piece, as the legislation was proposed, pertaining to staff. That would make camps the only industry in New York State requiring vaccines for employees. So I found that like a little hard to wrap my mind around. So, you know, thanks for your help. I really appreciate it. I didn't expect so many partners here, and people spoke so eloquently. So thank you so much. And really thanks to the town supervisors for being proactive in postponing this for a bit and not taking anything too quickly. Thank you.
David St. Ange.
Hello, my name is David St. Ange. I'm from Kinderhook, New York. I'm a parent of a vaccine-injured child. My son suffered from encephalitis after the MMR vaccine. Vaccine mandates are both inhumane and immoral. No family should ever be forced to go through what my family went through. I am strongly against this legislation and any future legislation that comes up just like this. Thank you.
Elijah Reed? Elijah Reed? Okay, we're done. Before I close the public hearing, I just wanted to say that the process tonight is the way things are supposed to work. We are, we propose a law, and we're supposed to get public input, which we got public input. And I just must say, we appreciate your input, and we will pay close attention to it. Like I said, we recorded it tonight. We have it. We're gonna take your written information that you submitted, and we're gonna get to work and make a determination in terms of what direction we're gonna head in. So, thank you all for coming. We appreciate your input, and with that, I close the public hearing.
Thank you.
Okay, please rise for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Request the clerk call the roll.
Basson.
Here.
Weigel.
Still here.
Leader. Here. Benvenuto.
Me too.
Stats.
Here.
Adams. Here. Metler. Here. Collins.
Here.
Riley.
Very much here.
Eldridge. I'm here. Fury.
Here.
Chipkowski.
Aye.
Ligonia.
Here.
Sterling. Here. Mia.
Here.
Chimides. Here. Mussman. Here. Scalera.
Here.
Guzzi.
Here.
Holding. Here. Morel.
Here.
Not.
Here.
Skoda.
Stowaway.
Ah.
Everybody's here.
Oh, so 35 here present and 0 absent. We have a quorum.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay, I need a motion to pay the bills, accept the treasurer's report, file the minutes.
So moved.
Second the motion?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. I'd like to have Rick Scalera come up front, and we have some guests here. Francis Hughes, Gene Cobb, Yvonne Cobb, Betty Davis, and Dorothy Holloway. Go here if you want. You can sit there, or you can come up front if you like.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome. My longtime friends from Shiloh. Former Supervisor Hughes, welcome. It's indeed my honor and pleasure to read the Chairman's proclamation on African American History Month 2020. February marks National African American History Month for 2020. This year the theme is African Americans and the Vote. This theme coincides with several important historic facts include the 150th anniversary of the 15th Amendment, which gave African Americans the right to vote. This amendment, ratified in 1870, prohibits the government from denying or abridging a citizen's right to vote based on race, color, or previous condition of servitude. This year also marks the 150th anniversary of the first African American member of Congress. In 1870, Hiram Revels from Mississippi served a one-year term in the United States Senate. There he fought for racial justice and equality. The 15th Amendment provided for voting rights to all men. It wasn't until 1965, with the adoption of Voting Rights Act, was there a more forceful effort to remove barriers at the state and local level and denied African Americans the right to vote. The 15th Amendment was adopted at the time of Civil War Reconstruction and in recognition of the abolishment of slavery and the service of many black Americans in the American Civil War. Colonel Davis Cowles received the authority on July 19, 1862, to raise the 128th Regiment, consisting of African American soldiers from both Columbia and Dutchess counties. It was organized in Hudson and mustered in service for the United States on September 4, 1862, and men were drawn out of Columbia and Dutchess counties. After leaving Hudson, they would travel first to Baltimore and then New Orleans. In 1863, this unit was assigned to Sherman's division and was complimented for the capture of Gainesville. The 128th was also noted for service in the siege of Port Hudson. The leader, Colonel Cowles, fell during the siege of Port Hudson. The regiment returned only 400 of the original 960 men and 173 recruits. Over 260 died in the service of the Civil War. This year, in African American Month, we celebrate the efforts of the 128th Regiment and the importance of the 15th Amendment, given under my hand and the Privy Seal of the County of Columbia at the Supervisors' Chambers in Hudson, New York, this 12th day of February, the year of our Lord, 2020. Matt Morrell, Chairman of the Columbia County Board of Supervisors. Thank you.
job. Okay, I'd like to request the clerk read the resolutions.
Resolution 31 of 2020 to 39 of 2020 by Supervisor Mia.
Mr. Chairman, I offer this resolution for adoption.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution 40 of 2020 to 41 of 2020 by Supervisor Benvenuto.
Mr. Chairman, I offer these resolutions for adoption.
Second the motion?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution 42 of 2020 to 49 of 2020 by Supervisor Beery.
Mr. Chairman, I move these resolutions for adoption.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution 50 of 2020 to 55 of 2020 by Supervisor Guzzi.
Mr. Chairman, I offer these resolutions for adoption.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution 56 of 2020 to 60 of 2020 by Supervisor Sterling.
Mr. Chairman, I offer these resolutions for adoption, and I ask for a roll call vote on number 59.
Okay, so it'll be 56 through 58, and then 60 will be, so we need a motion?
Oh,
Do
sure.
we have a second? Do we have a second? Second motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried?
So
Roll call vote.
Okay. Basson.
Yes.
Weigel.
Yes.
Leader. Benvenuto.
Yes.
Stats.
Yes.
Adams.
Yes.
Mettler.
Yes.
Collins.
Yes.
Riley.
Yes.
Eldridge.
I abstain with no comment.
Fury.
Yes.
Chipkowski.
Yes.
Livonia.
Yes.
Sterling.
Yes.
Mia.
Yes.
Chimides.
Yes.
Mussman.
No.
Scalera.
Yes.
Guzzi.
Yes.
Holding.
Yes.
Morel.
Yes.
Knott.
Yes.
Skoda.
Yes.
Thirty-two twenty-five ayes, 74 nay, 1 abstain at 236. The resolution passes.
Thank you. Congratulations, Mr. Dow. Okay, do any supervisors have anything to bring to the board?
Mr. Morel?
May I make a quick comment? And I know it's been a long night, so I'll keep it short. I was actually hoping to speak during the public hearing. I didn't realize the supervisors wouldn't get a chance. I did submit a letter from our camp director that does echo the other 3 camp directors that we heard from. This proposed law as it stands, and also with possible amendments that have been produced, would be harmful to our town camp. I really feel strongly that local government is the best place to address issues that individual communities are having. We are in a very unique situation here in Columbia County that I think is wonderful, where we don't have to go and lobby our county legislators to make sure that our towns are taken care of. We are our county legislators. So if there's an individual town or 2 having an issue, let them pass the legislation. In the proposed law, actually the whereas language says municipalities may, which allows them to have that authority. I even heard from the camp director in one of the towns that had the issues that they don't want it either. And so I just feel like there's not an issue that we need to address, and I would strongly urge the Health and Human Services Committee to not revisit the law, just to let it go to the side and not come back in a year to hear 2 more hours of testimony, and just, if the state's gonna pass regulations, the state's gonna pass regulations. Let our county not be the one to pass more stringent regulations than the state has. So I urge you to put that aside and not revisit it. Thank you.
Supervisor Eldridge?
I'm sure everyone is aware of the fatality in Greenport at the ABM Million. It was already, I did make a statement for the paper, but I just want to reiterate that the way the county came together, the forest rangers, EMS, the sheriff's department, the town of Greenport Police Department, under the direction of Dave Bartlett, was something I never want to have to see again. But with the training, all the training that they go through, that make what they did necessary during that incident was phenomenal. And it was the dignity that they showed to the family and to the preservation of the body, where it was it was amazing. It really was. I just hope anybody ever has to go through that. But the county should be proud of what they have, most definitely.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Myers?
I'd like to thank you, the Health and Human Services Department to pull out the resolution. I was sitting that committee, I was a mixed feeling, I don't know what I do like that. But I have a personal something I told you that. I'm a father of 2 autistic kids. One is the severe and another is the mild. So my family never have it autistics. they do the vaccination in this country. I was believed that one of the cause of the vaccination of the autistic. Because I see them like 12 to 15 years ago, one of the CNN report, that California, one of the guy, so against the vaccination. 15 years, I remember that. So I was, when I see it, now I thinking that I don't believe that I have a misconception that cause for the vaccination, my son, I believe that, I was believe it, so I am going to support it. I just back up little bit. So also I let you know that another thing, religiously prohibited. A lot of people are talking about the foreign worker. We are immigrant family. When foreign embassy issue a visa, they make sure check the all medical report, medical immunization, everything they check it, then they issue visa. So you already check it. I don't think so. Religiously, a lot of people don't believe that. I think so. We have to look at it hard, and I'm sitting in the committee, and thank you for that time, and we can work together. We don't want to make it a mandate to everybody. We can waive the people who didn't want it. We should look at it that way in future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other supervisors? Supervisor Musselman.
No, I was on this committee, and it was the first time I was on that committee, and Jack Mabb was very eager to have this pass. And I must say, I was certainly misinformed of a lot of the information that we heard tonight. It would have been better for us to hear that first, before we were asked to pass a law, which frankly, I don't think any of us were really prepared to take on, because we simply didn't understand. And as it stood, the law was filled with flaws anyway, as Mr. Lagonia pointed out. So I'm feeling that sometimes these things come at us very fast, and we need to slow down and really think through the things we're asked to support. Thank you very much.
Any other comments? Okay, thank you. I just have one set of appointments I wanted to make. We have an America 250 committee in 2026. It's going to be the 20 years or anniversary. The semi-quincentennial. It's a lot, that's a mouthful. But I'd like to appoint Robert Bury, Patsy Leader, and Brenda Adams to work with our county historian, Bill Vetter, on preparing for that event. We've got a few years, but Bill's raring to go. So. Okay. And with that, I'd like to, after we adjourn the meeting, I'd like to take a moment of silence. Some of you may have read that one of our former directors of real property, Clyde Tinklebaugh, passed away recently. So if we can adjourn the meeting and then do a moment of silence. So I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.